Hello, and welcome to the world of Pokemon. My name is Professor Noki, and you're here once again for Noki Jr. Today, as you might have guessed, I'll be continuing my series of my very favorite Pokemon from each typing in each region. The typings that I have selected for today's video will be Electric, Fighting, and Poison. And as redundant as it may be at this point, I've started this list out in Kanto, where the Electric type Pokemon that I selected would be none other than Raichu. I cannot deny that I have always loved this Pokemon dearly. I couldn't believe in the anime that Ash never evolved his Pikachu. Honestly, I never really understood it. Even in that one episode where he came really close, I thought, yes, this is gonna be the day. This is finally gonna be the day that there's gonna be a Raichu there at Ash's side to help him win these Pokemon leagues. But no, not so much. Of course, I'm well aware it's more about the bond. But that aside, I really do love Raichu. I think it's an amazing design, and I always honestly wish that they would have kept the third stage evolution, Gorochu, as well. I think that really would have been an awesome tie-out to the evolutionary line. For the fighting type Pokemon in this region, I would select Hitmonlee. And honestly, I've always really liked Hitmonlee, but it wasn't until recently that I would have put this as my absolute favorite on this list, when my son, Pokemon trainer Hulk Smash, dearly loved him as one of his very first Pokemon that he could say. He would walk around the house going, Hitmonlee, Hitmonlee, kicking his leg around, and I just absolutely loved it. So for that reason, it would have to be on this list. Rounding things out for the poison type, I would select Vileplume. Now, the evolutionary line for Oddish has always been among one of my favorite evolutionary lines, especially when they added Blossom and the Sunstone as well. And honestly, I always hoped that after they gave Alolan forms that maybe we would see some form of variant to this line, and still fingers crossed for Galar. However, Vileplume itself is absolutely amazing. I love its overall design, its moveset, and its general theme as well. Up next, of course, we have Johto, where I would select the electric type Pokemon, Ampharos. And this is one of my absolute favorite evolutionary lines in this region. And when they gave it the Mega form, which then added the Dragon typing to Ampharos as well, it just added a level of perfection that really rounded this Pokemon out. Next up, we have the Fighting type Pokemon, which I would select Heracross. Now, you probably would think that this would be more like a bug type Pokemon. However, I really genuinely appreciate its fighting type style, and the fact that when it gained its Mega form, it really enhanced this ability as well. Finally for Johto, we have the poison type Pokemon, in which I selected the flying terror with wings, Crobat. Personally, I never really was much of a fan of either Zubat nor Golbat, but when they gave it a third stage evolution in Crobat, and really streamlined its design, I actually gained a lot of appreciation for this Pokemon, especially since you really had to work very hard in order to evolve your Golbat into one of these. Sailing away into the Hoenn region and choosing an electric type Pokemon was a little bit of a challenge, because I had to really select between either the cool or the cute factor. And ultimately I had to go with the cute factor and select Plusle and Minun. Although I've never really used either of these Pokemon in any form of battle scenario where I felt very confident that they were strong Pokemon that I was using and would win with, I really have always adored and loved these Pokemon down to their very core. I think they're absolutely adorable, and I love the fact that they're always a tag team type Pokemon, especially in the TCG. Since I'm a card collector, I love the different forms of cards that come from Plusle and Minun, where they're always in each other's cards in various and fun ways. For the fighting type Pokemon in this region, I would have to select Makuhita. I honestly don't think I can remember a single playthrough of any of the Hoenn games that I have ever not chosen to use a Makuhita along my journey. Now, of course, I did evolve it into its Hariyama form, but I always really preferred the Makuhita design, and that is ultimately why it is the one that I selected for this list. The poison type Pokemon that concludes the Hoenn region for this list would be none other than the snake itself, Seviper. Seviper! Not only do I absolutely love Jessie Seviper on the anime, I also really do love Seviper as a Pokemon and have used it many times through many of my journeys through the Hoenn region. This Pokemon is an absolute force to be reckoned with, in not only its typing, but also its moveset. Onward and away into the Sinnoh region, and starting with the electric type Pokemon, I would select Luxray. Although I would have to say Rotom is probably a close runner-up. Luxray, however, wins out because it's just such an amazing looking Pokemon. And I actually really look forward to the possible Diamond and Pearl remakes and how this Pokemon could potentially gain maybe a Mega form that would end up giving it the dark typing that it most certainly deserves. Another close call in this region would be the tie that I have between the fighting type Pokemon, in which I would have to select either Gallade or Lucario. It really ultimately is such a hard toss-up. However, I probably would lean more towards Gallade, only because the psychic typing has certain specialties that I really appreciate in a Pokemon. However, Lucario's overall coolness factor and moveset and typing, with that secondary typing of Steel, which has so many different resistances, 10 to be exact. Check out my most recent type weaknesses and resistance video if you have not. So maybe at the end of the day, this one I might just have to call a draw. However, the poison type Pokemon that finishes up this list was not so hard to choose, as my children absolutely adore this Pokemon to death for some reason, and that would be Croagunk. Now, I don't say for some reason because this is a bad Pokemon by any means. I actually really like this Pokemon as well. However, it does interest me that my children would be so fascinated by this Pokemon with so many others that exist that I would think would be much cooler in their opinion. However, my youngest son, Pokemon trainer Hulk Smash especially, has always been somewhat drawn to Croagunk and actually plays as him all the time. Up next and a little closer to home, we have the Unova region, where I would select the electric type Pokemon Zebstrika. This is another one for me that's really based a lot on nostalgia, as when my daughter was first playing her very first Pokemon game, which was Pokemon Black, she ended up catching a wild Blitzel that she named Marbles, and then raised into a Zebstrika, which ended up becoming one of her most powerful Pokemon, and not only that, but ended up going on to helping her win her very first Pokemon League. So, Zebstrika has always held a very special place in my heart. For the fighting type Pokemon in this region, I would select Mienfoo. It would really be a close toss-up between it and its evolution, Mienshao. However, I really generally like Mienfoo the most, I would have to say. And I like the first time that I caught a Mienfoo, I named it Growl. Get it? Because it's Foo and it's a fighting type Pokemon. Foo Fighter, Dave Grohl. Anyway, moving on, we have the poison type Pokemon in this region that I would select, which would be Venipede. Venipede is such a wicked looking Pokemon overall. I honestly would never want to come across one of these in the real life in the wild, and for that it gains a lot of respect in my opinion because there aren't a lot of bug type Pokemon that are just absolutely terrifying. However, this one most certainly is. And now obviously we have Kalos. And for the electric type Pokemon in this region, I would select Dedenne. This Pikachu clone is probably ranked in my opinion among one of my favorite Pikachu clones that they've come up with so far. I love its round, cute, fluffy nature and the fact that they added a fairy typing to it as well. Next, for the fighting type Pokemon, we have an absolute tie, and actually between two members of the same evolutionary line. That being Pancham and Pangoro. Ever since I first got a look at these Pokemon and used them in my very first adventure through the Kalos region, I absolutely fell in love with this Pokemon and have carried it with me along my journey. And I really genuinely hope they allow for these Pokemon to be in the upcoming titles of Pokemon Sword and Shield. And finally, for the poison type Pokemon in this region, I would have to go with Dragalge. I think this is an absolutely amazing design concept for a Pokemon. That crossover between the algae and the sea dragon, and just this overall poison dragon typing is just so cool. Alola! First up in this region, for the electric typing, I would have to select Vikavolt. And although I'll be completely honest, I haven't really used this Pokemon in any of my playthroughs in the Alola region, I absolutely love this Pokemon's overall design, and I'm not against using it, I just haven't really taken the opportunity to do so. For the fighting type Pokemon in this region, it was a little bit difficult to select one, as there aren't really any that really jump out at me. However, ultimately for its evolutionary method, I could end up choosing Crabominable, as I really do appreciate the fact that you can only evolve it on that one specific mountain peak in the region. And finally for Alola, we have the poison type Pokemon, in which I would select Salazzle. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm one of those people who really loves all the different quirks and nuances that set each Pokemon apart from one another, and I really appreciate all the different things that play into how that Pokemon evolves. To finish up this list, we move along to the most recent region that we've been introduced to, which is the Galar region. So there aren't really a lot of Pokemon to choose from thus far. To begin with, we have my selection for an electric type Pokemon. And although this was a little difficult, as I do really love both of the electric type Pokemon that they've shown us thus far, I ultimately would have to select Morpeko. Not only do I really love the gimmick that they've given this Pokemon with its full belly mode or its hangry mode, which determines which typing it actually has, but I also really love the Pokemon's overall design and how even though it's a Pikachu clone, it actually kind of plays off of that in its design somewhat, and I think we're going to find out in its story that it's just actually colored like a Pikachu and not necessarily much like one ultimately when it comes down to it. For the fighting type Pokemon in this region, we really ultimately only know of Sirfetch'd so far. And I really do love Sirfetch'd, so I'll select him for my list. Obviously, if you've been watching my channel for some time, you already know my thoughts and opinions on the Sirfetch'd Galarian evolution, and so you'll know that I think it's really cool that they've done this fan service to Farfetch'd, and therefore I can justify putting it on this list. As for poison type Pokemon, there haven't been any brand new Pokemon that have been introduced for this typing. However, they have introduced the Galarian form for Weezing, which is a poison and fairy type, the first of its kind actually, and a really cool Pokemon in and of itself. So for now, I'll have to go with this Pokemon. However, when there actually is a brand new Pokemon of the poison type variety, I'll probably add that to my future list. And thus concludes the list for what my favorite electric and fighting and poison type Pokemon from each region would be. Please let me know in the comments down below what your favorites are. Also, please consider liking and sharing this video to help support this growing channel. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been Professor Noki signing out once again for Noki Jr.